Imagine a weapon so terrifying that its own creators prayed it would never be used. A secret so dark, it was buried for decades. During the height of World War II, a war already defined by unimaginable horrors, a group of scientists conducted an experiment so radical, so dangerous, that its results were immediately classified, and the entire project was scrubbed from history. This wasn't about a bigger bomb or a faster plane. This was an experiment that delved into the very fabric of human endurance, pushing soldiers to limits no one thought possible, and in the process, unleashing something they couldn't control. What did they create in the hidden labs of the Second World War? And why was it so terrifying that the project was never, ever repeated? The world was on fire. World War II wasn't just a battle of armies. It was a battle of minds, a relentless arms race where victory depended on the next great invention. In this high-stakes game, science became a weapon. Ethical boundaries, once held sacred, became blurred and then disappeared entirely. If a new technology could shorten the war, save lives on your side, and crush the enemy, how far was too far? This was the moral gray zone, where our story takes place. Governments poured unlimited resources into top-secret projects, from the atomic bomb to early forms of psychological warfare. They were looking for an edge, any edge, and in this desperate search, they stumbled upon a field of research that promised to create the ultimate soldier, one who felt no fear, no pain, and no fatigue. But in their quest to build a super soldier, they risked destroying the very humanity they claimed to be fighting for. This desperation set the stage for one of the most chilling experiments ever conceived, deep within a secure, undisclosed facility. The experiment began. The official objective was to study the effects of extreme stress and deprivation on combat readiness. The unofficial goal was far more ambitious: to unlock the human mind's potential for warfare, to create a soldier who could operate beyond normal physical and psychological limits. They selected a group of highly resilient soldiers for the program. The tests started simply: prolonged sleep deprivation, food and water rationing, and constant exposure to simulated combat sounds. But soon, the protocols escalated dramatically. The soldiers were subjected to sensory deprivation tanks for days on end, then immediately thrown into high-stress combat simulations. They were administered a cocktail of experimental stimulants and psychoactive compounds designed to eliminate fear and enhance aggression. The objective was to break the soldier and rebuild him as a perfect weapon. The initial results were astonishing. The soldiers could stay awake for days, perform complex tasks with machine-like precision, and showed a complete lack of fear in situations that would cause a normal person to break down. From a purely military perspective, the experiment was a resounding success. They had created the super soldier, but the side effects were horrifying. The men lost the ability to distinguish between friend and foe. Their aggression became uncontrollable, leading to violent outbursts even among themselves. They were haunted by vivid hallucinations, their minds fractured by the relentless psychological pressure. They were no longer soldiers. They were unstable, unpredictable weapons. The scientists watched in growing alarm as their subjects descended into a state of permanent psychosis. They had tried to suppress the soldiers' humanity, and in doing so, they had unleashed a monster. The experiment was spiraling out of control, and the once promising results were now a source of deep-seated terror. The true horror of the project dawned on its creators, not when they looked at their enemies, but when they looked at what they had created. The men in the lab coats, who had begun with the noble intention of winning the war, now stared at the human wreckage they had caused. They had built a weapon more terrifying than any bomb because it was a weapon that had a mind of its own, a shattered, violent mind. The greatest fear was no longer losing the war. The greatest fear was what would happen if these soldiers were ever deployed. How could you control them? What would they do to civilian populations? What would they do when the war was over? There was no off switch. The project files contained chilling entries from the lead scientists. One wrote, "We sought to create a man without fear, and instead, we have created a man without a soul." They realized they had crossed a line from which there was no return. The experiment had to be stopped. The results were buried. The facility was decommissioned, and the surviving subjects were quietly moved to secure medical institutions. Their stories erased from history. The creators' fear was that their discovery, their terrible success, would one day be replicated. The story of this experiment serves as a chilling reminder. In our endless pursuit of power and advantage, we must be careful what we unleash. Some weapons are designed to end wars, to bring about peace through strength. But other weapons, born from a disregard for ethics and a thirst for dominance, have the potential to end more than just a war. They can end our very humanity. The Second World War produced many innovations that changed our world, for better and for worse. But the most terrifying creations are not always the ones that make the biggest explosion. Sometimes, they are the ones that whisper to us from the darkest corners of human potential, reminding us that there are some doors that should never be opened. This chapter of history was closed and locked for a reason, because the ultimate weapon isn't one that targets the enemy's body, but one that destroys the soul, and that's a price no victory is worth. Thanks for watching. If you find these hidden stories from history fascinating, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more.